Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Legion Alpha video. I'm here with the Holy Paladin with his extremely badass artifact weapon, and today I'm just going to be showing you essentially how Holy is going to be working in Legion. We're going to do that quite simply. We'll go over the basic abilities, then we'll go over all the abilities, then the talents, and finally we will be taking a look at the artifact weapon. Now this is a pretty massive change from how it worked in Warlords of Draenor, from what I gather, in that it is now actually a melee spec. Yeah, I know, a melee healer. How's that? Well, it's actually because of one of their talents, which is Lightbringer. Proximity to your target causes your spells to heal for up to 59% more. So let's go and use this on action on these healing dummies. If I'm right beside this target, we will do a Holy Light, and there you go, 41,000. However, if I run all the way back here, what you will see is instead of doing 41,000 damage, it instead healed for 30,000. Now, in addition to that, we do have our DPS toolkit, which pretty much comprises of Judgment, Crusader Strike, Denounce, and Consecration. As you can see, a little bit more of a melee focus there. So let's just start off by going through the very basic abilities. Flash of Light, 5,120 mana, 1.5 second cast, heals for 25,900. Obviously, because of that mastery, it will be healing for a good bit more on targets. Also, there is a Beacon of Light on that other healing dummy, which is why it's getting some healing duplicated. So that is your fast but expensive spell. We then have Holy Light, 3,800 mana, 2.5 second cast, and it heals for pretty much the same amount as Flash of Light does. Now we then move on to Light of Dawn, 4,400 mana, unleash a wave of healing energy before you, healing up to 5 injured allies within 15 yards, in a cone for 10,390. So if we do that, you can see everybody in front of me gets a little bit of a heal. We then have Holy Shock, very similar to how it is now. It's on an 8-second cooldown, 3,800 mana. If it's targeted on an enemy, it will do 34,000 holy damage, and if it's on an ally, 31,000 healing. Now, it has a double the normal chance to critically strike, so it can be quite the clutch save. There we go, just went for 48k. So ideally, you're going to you'll want to be standing pretty much close into people because you can see, well, that did happen to crit, but you do heal for significantly more when you're near people. And the final part of our basic healing toolkit is Light of the Martyr. Sacrifice 34,000 of your own health to instantly heal an ally for up to 31,000. This is a very potent heal, sealing this for 49,000, 57,000, and yeah, pretty much taking for 57,000. As you can see, my own health is going down. What's important about that, though, is this is 2,400 mana, instant cast for a big heal, whereas Holy Light, 2.5 second cast, smaller heal, and costs more mana. So if you're in a clutch situation, Light of the Martyr is designed to get you out of that, but you need to be very careful that you don't get yourself killed. Now, with that covered, let's talk about the DPS toolkit. We start off with Judgment. You judge an enemy, dealing 40,000 damage and causing the target to take 30% increased damage from your Crusader Strike and Holy Shock for 6 seconds. We then have Crusader Strike, which just whacks him for 27,000 physical damage, and Denounce, which does 10,000 holy damage and prevents the target from causing critical effects for the next 4 seconds. Unfortunately, the best we can do is level 110 training dummy, but it's a very basic toolkit, so as you can see, we can Judgment, we can Holy Shock, which in this case is missed, we can do our Crusader Strike, we can spam some Denounces, we can Consecrate as well. I'll probably throw in some footage from the Artifact Weapon quest, don't worry, it's pretty spoiler free though. Overall, it's a very basic DPS toolkit. Now, there are some circumstances where that will actually have an effect on your healing due to one of the level 100 talents, which means that anytime you deal damage with Crusader Strike, Judgment, Holy Shock, Denounce, or auto attacks, it will heal your Beacon of Light target. Speaking of Beacon of Light, what does it do now? Well, 800 mana, instant cast. Basically, your heals, you put it on a target, and then your heals on anybody else will also heal the target who has Beacon of Light for up to 40% of the amount healed. Flash of Light and Holy Light on the Beacon of Light target will refund 30% of their mana costs, so they're more mana efficient. Let's just say the training dummy on the left is the main tank, and this training dummy over here is a stupid hunter who's standing in something. Because, let's be honest, it probably is. So, and I say that as a hunter, so if I Holy Light the hunter, as you can see, the target dummy, which we have designated as being the main tank, is also getting healed. Pretty simple stuff. And then if I was to cast Holy Light on this training dummy, it's 30% Well, I get 30% of the mana cost refunded, which is pretty darn nice. So overall, that is a look at their basic healing toolkit. Let's go through every single ability. So, Absolution returns all dead party members to life with 35% maximum health or mana, cannot be cast when in combat. Basically, it's a mass res, so that's honestly super handy. We move on to Blessing of Sacrifice. You place a blessing on a party or raid member, transferring 30% of the damage taken to you for 12 seconds, or until the transfer damage would cause you to fall below 20% health. So between this and one of your auras, which is Aura of Sacrifice, and Light of the Martyr, you actually can be losing a decent amount of health. We move on to Cleanse. Cleanse a friendly target, removing all poison, disease, and magic effects. Then we've got Aura Mastery. Empowers your chosen aura and increases its radius to 40 yards for 6 seconds. Now, I just need to show you what these auras are, because you can actually find them mainly here in the talents. So, Devotion Aura. Allies within 10 yards take 20% reduced damage, split over the number of allies in the aura. So, if there are loads of allies, they won't have, they won't be getting the full 20%. However, during Aura Mastery, that is no longer split over the allies in your aura. So, essentially, everybody within 10 yards, which is then, I suppose, actually, yeah, it's increased, to 40 yards by Aura Mastery. But basically, everybody takes 20% less damage. So, that's quite a potent cooldown. We then have Aura of Sacrifice. Whenever an ally within 10 yards takes damage, 10% of the damage is redirected to you, while you are above 50% health. But during Aura Mastery, of course, its radius goes up to 40 yards, and 15% of all effective healing that you do is replicated on all allies in the aura. And then we've got Aura of Mercy. This restores 1,300 health to 1 to 3 injured allies within 10 yards every 1 second during Aura Mastery, though it's got no target limits. So, as an example, I've got it right now. If I walk really close to these guys, they start getting healed. But if I walk really far away and do Aura Mastery, you can see, now they're getting healed. Overall, pretty cool little mechanic. We move on to Avenging Wrath. This increases healing done by 50% and your critical strike and damage by 20% for 30 seconds. However, I do have Sanctified Wrath turned on, which causes your Avenging Wrath to last 50% longer. And if you're in Holy, reduce Holy Shock's cooldown by 50% and increase its crit chance by a further 20. We then have Consecration. This just does 35,000 damage over 9 seconds to enemies who enter the area of the Consecration. We've got Beacon of Light, which I've already covered, Crusader Strike, which I've already covered, Blessing of Freedom. This puts a blessing on a friendly target, 15-second cooldown, granting immunity to movement impairing effects for 8 seconds. There's Denounce, which I've already covered. Blessing of Protection makes you immune from all physical attacks for 10 seconds. So if I go and use it on myself, there you go, I'm immune to stuff, which is pretty cool, and I can still, go around and cast spells and things, which is pretty nifty. We've got Divine Protection. This will reduce all damage taken by 20% for 8 seconds. And then we move on to Divine Shield. This is an old favorite, 2.5 minute cooldown, protects you from all damage and spells for 8 seconds, and you can attack during it. So I can, attack this, and, I'm doing the same amount of damage. Like, I got, 40k from a Crusader Strike? Now, in WoD, you do 50% throughput when Divine Shield's up. It doesn't appear that that's the case. We move on to Judgment, which I've already covered. Flash of Light, which I've already covered. Lay on Hands will heal a friendly target for an amount equal to your maximum health. You've got Guiding Light, which takes you back to your Class Order Hall. Light of Dawn, which is the big cone heal. Hammer of Justice, which will stun your target for 6 seconds. Light of the Martyr, which I've already covered. Redemption, which will resurrect a player. Holy Light, which is your slow but efficient heal. Holy Shock, which is actually, it's efficient, does a lot of healing, but it's on a 8-second cooldown. And because, of course, that lovely crit bonus, it can be quite the get out of jail card. As far as our regular passives go, we've got Divine Intervention, so any attack that would kill you will instead reduce you to 20% maximum health and trigger Divine Shield. This cannot occur if Divine Shield is on cooldown or you have Forbearance. Heart of the Crusader increases your mount speed by 20%. And then Infusion of Light, your Holy Shock crits reduce the cast time of your next Holy Light by 1.5 seconds, or increase the healing of your next flash heal by 50%. You would have seen procs appear on my 1 and 2. That is the effect of that. Let's see, are we going to get a crit? No, we're not. That's unfortunate. And then we move on to Lightbringer, which of course will increase your healing based on your proximity to the target. So let's move on to the talents. Holy Bolt increases the damage and healing of Holy Shock by 30%. Pretty simple one overall. We then have Light's Hammer, so you throw a hammer at an area, it will then pulse 10 yard, well, like pulse thingies out every 2 seconds for 14 seconds. If it hits an enemy, it does 6,500 damage. If it hits an ally, it will heal them for 3,400. So let's go and use Light's Hammer. We throw it down. It sits there. It does some healing. That's the same spell effect as a thing that already exists in the game. We've got Crusader's Might. Your successful Crusader strikes grant you Crusader's Might, increasing the effectiveness of Lightbringer, which is what is your proximity-based buff, by 12%. So you're really doubling down on being a melee tank, or a melee healer, sorry, if you've got that. But honestly, you're going to be in melee if you're playing a Holy Paladin. It's pretty much that simple with this current mastery. Now we move on to the 30 tier, Beacon of Hope. You place a Beacon of Hope at a target location after 3 seconds, or when you take damage, you will be sent to the beacon. So let's have a bit of a play around with this. So I will put it there, and in 3 seconds time, we're going to be teleported to our beacon, or of course, if we were to take some damage. With that covered, we've got Unbreakable Spirit, reduces the cooldown of Divine Shield, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands by 50%, and finally Shield of Vengeance, 2-minute cooldown, creates a barrier of holy light that absorbs around 70,000 damage for 15 seconds. When the barrier is consumed, all damage absorbed is dealt to your current melee target as holy damage. On to the 45 tier, Fist of Justice. Your Judgment reduces the remaining cooldown of Hammer of Justice by 10 seconds. Repentance, 3,200 mana, 15-second cooldown, 1.67 cast. Forces the target into meditation, incapacitating them, and dealing up to a maximum of 25% of their health as damage over 1 minute. Usable against demons, dragonkin, giants, humanoids, and the undead. And then finally, Blinding Light. This emits a dazzling thing of light in all directions, blinding enemies within 10 yards, which does 22,000 damage and disorients them for 6 seconds. So to show you what that looks like, well, it's not really going to do anything to the target dummies, but there you go, Blinding Light. Overall, pretty cool. We've moved on to the auras. I've already covered them though, so let's just move on to the 75 tier. Divine Purpose, Light of Dawn, and Holy Shock have a 20% chance to not start their cooldown. So, 20% of the time, you'll get to use them twice. That's pretty cool, I suppose. Twice in a row. Sanctified Wrath is something that we've already covered previously in the video. And then Holy Prism, a beam of light goes to the target, turns them into a Holy Prism. Enemies take 23,000 holy damage and radiate 17,000 healing to 5 nearby allies within 15 yards. A friendly target will radiate the same amount of healing to nearby friendlies, but will also be directly healed for 27,000. So to show you what Holy Prism is like, we'll just drag it onto a bar here, click in one of these dummies, do our Holy Prism, and there you go, they've got their Holy Prism. Right now it doesn't seem to be doing the radiating damage though, which is a little bit strange. We move on to the 90 tier, Stoicism. Reduces the damage you take from Light of the Martyr by 30%. Light of the Martyr is the very clutch heal, instant, a lot of healing done, but it does cost your own health, so it will cost 30% less of your own health if you're using it. We've got Daybreak, reduces the cooldown of Light of Dawn by 3 seconds. Light of Dawn, of course, is your cone-based AoE heal, so I suppose if there's a lot of AoE damage going, that's maybe a talent you'd want to consider. And then Judgment of Light. Your Judgment applies Judgment of Light to the target, causing the next 40 successful attacks to heal the attacker for 1,300. So if you apply this to a raid boss, and a whole bunch of people are attacking it, they'll all get small heals because they've attacked the raid boss. And because you'll be applying your Judgments all the time, uptime of Judgment of the Light will be quite high. It really does depend on how quickly people blast through the 40 charges. Do bear in mind that the effect can only happen once every few seconds per target. Onto the 100 tier, Beacon of Faith. This just gives you a second Beacon of Light, which is pretty simple. So I could do my Beacon of Light here, and then my Beacon of Faith on this guy, and now all of my heals are chained together, but realistically, that's not a healing scenario that's going to exist with only 2 targets. But still, it is pretty cool. Then we've got Beacon of the Lightbringer. So the maximum bonus from Lightbringer is increased by 24%, and now increases your healing based on the proximity to either yourself or your Beacon of Light, whichever is chosen. Now let's just go with this is a hypothetical here, but if you were a Holy Paladin standing in melee and you put your beacon on one of the ranged people for whatever reason, then your healing bonus due to Lightbringer would be fully active or very active for the melee stack and your current stack. Do bear in mind, though, that because of things like, you know, Crusader Strike, and maybe if you were going to be using Beacon of the Lightbringer, you might also be using Crusader's Might, that means that, you know, you yourself will want to be planted in melee, but this just gives you more coverage of your mastery at a higher percentage because it is based on your proximity. So, you know, like this is healing for... I should really do a Flash of Light. So yeah, Flash of Light, this heals for 39,000. I move a few steps closer, it heals for 42,000. A few more steps closer, it heals for 47,000. Anyway, Beacon of the Save is your final one. Dealing damage with Crusader Strike, Judgment, Holy Shock, Denounce, or auto attacks will heal your Beacon of Light for 10,000. So that's pretty much like it's passive healing basically, because in your downtime, assuming you're not using a cooldown on a heal, you will be using a cooldown on your Judgment or your Crusader Strike or something like that as a part of your DPS rotation. One of their broader goals in Legion has been to put a bit more DPS into the hands of healers. So, what does the Silver Hand do? Its passive is that it stores up power to increase the potency of your next Holy Shock. Of course, being a passive, it's not very exciting, it just operates on its own accord. We then have Light Burst. Let's use Light Burst. So this releases the Light of the Silver Hand, healing an injured ally within 40 yards for 10,000 every 1 second for 10 seconds. So let's go and do that. Boom, Light Burst, and we should be seeing lots of healing going off on these two friendly targets, pulsing out. So that's very cool. We then move on to the major traits for the artifact weapon. Protection of Tier. Aura Mastery now also increases healing received by all allies within 40 yards by 15 seconds, which thus will increase the potency of Aura Mastery as a main cooldown. We move on to the Light Saves. Whenever your Beacon of Light target falls below 50% max health, your next heal will transfer 100% additional healing to the Beacon target. As an example, you're halfway through a cast on a healer, or another healer, or a ranged DPS. The tank, who is your Beacon, has just dropped to 40% health. That cast that you're in the middle of doing will do a really big heal on the tank as well, but this can only happen once every 30 seconds, but I think it's a pretty cool little oh shit thing that's baked in to the gameplay, though it does take a little bit of clutchness out of the spec because it does kind of fire off in a smartish manner by itself. And we then move on to Boon of the Silver Hand. Whenever you activate Avenging Wrath, an image of the Silver Hand will drop down from the sky and release orbs of light that will heal allies that it hits. Of course, you'll be in melee range, so that will be dropping down on people's heads. Overall, what do I think of this spec? Personally, I think it feels quite different, though the last time that I played Holy Paladin properly was actually during Wrath of the Lich King, doing the heroic ICC 5-mans. That was most of my Holy Paladin healing in World of Warcraft, so I can't speak much to how it is at the minute. I'm sure, there'll be some duplicate spells and things like that have moved from expansion to expansion that I won't really have covered as such, but the point of these videos is from the ground up, so that if you know nothing about a Holy Paladin, you can finish watching this video, and no matter what role you play or anything like that, you'll now understand how the Holy Paladin works in Legion, at least at the minute. I think that's a bit more beneficial, and hopefully it'll allow people to understand the plight of their healers. Overall, though, I think it's pretty enjoyable, though it seems like a very big change. And I'm curious to see what the Holy Paladins who are playing the game at the minute have got to say about that, because it could be a very different method of playing. I can't speak to it much because I haven't played it in Warlords of Draenor. What I can say, though, is I think it's pretty neat, at the very least. We'll just need to see how these things realistically are going to work in a raid perspective. There is definitely a niche here that you're going to be healing the melee people, for the most part, because that is where, unless you use that particular talent and put your beacon in a very particular place, but, for the most part, you're going to be in the melee stack, so I guess for a melee heavy raid, these guys are going to be absolute tanks, but if you've got, you'll need another healer. I don't think having two Paladin healers, having two of the same healer generally isn't the best idea anyway, but having two Paladin healers is probably going to be even more punishing on your raid because they do have more of a melee focus now. And that's it, I suppose. Yeah, you could be all the way back in ranged, and you could do judgments and holy shocks on the target. You'd be able to heal the people around you, but it wouldn't be ideal in terms of how the spec is supposed to play. So overall, that's what's going on with the Holy Paladin. I think it's interesting. We'll need to wait and see how things develop and how it actually plays in terms of real-world testing within raids. that's just the kind of thing I can't speak to. But hopefully this video has given you enough information to understand what's going on and make up your own mind about it. That's it for me, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.